I sat at a round table with all the people that work for me at Club Jenna, and I said, listen, this is my idea. Let's buy a billboard. They all looked at me like I was absolutely insane. And I'm telling you, this is going to change things. I decided, and I'm going to rent this billboard for 2 years. I expect you to double that and then pay me on the back end. Him saying, you are a tiger in business, and I'm going to pay it just because.
Welcome to the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast. I am your host, Daniel Wood. Today's episode is one I've really been looking forward to sharing with you because here at the Swedish Wealth Institute, we're obsessed with one question. What is the difference that makes the difference? And today's guest is a perfect case study in exactly that because we are interviewing Jenna Jameson. She is globally known as the most famous adult film star in history, but that's not why we're interviewing her. We're interviewing Jenna because in an industry that is incredibly crowded, where there are thousands of beautiful women and just being hot is not a competitive advantage, she became the one that everyone knows, the one that transcended the industry. She didn't build fame, she built a business. She treated her business like a CEO, positioning, marketing, scarcity, distribution, and brand leverage. And she turned that into a real company that she eventually sold for over $100 million. So if you're an entrepreneur or a creator or anyone that's just trying to stand out in a noisy market, this episode isn't about the industry. It's about the principles that let someone dominate any industry. And of course, we love spoiling you as our listener. So as always, I've got a gift for you. Before I share it, is it all right if I ask you a quick favor? If you've been enjoying the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast, please do what thousands of people all over the world have already done. Hit the follow and subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. So as a thank you for listening, we want to give you the Wealth Blueprint, created with our amazing speakers to help you take the next step towards your dream life. You can go to our website and grab it, theswedishwealthinstitute.com. You find the link in the show notes. And of course, I want to welcome Jenna Jameson. Here we go. Well, we're very excited to learn from you. You know, we are always trying to figure out what is the difference that makes the difference. And you truly transcended your industry and became a household name. So I wanted to ask, what was it that made you unique? What made you stand out?
Wow, this is a question that I ask myself all the time. What made me different? I think that it really wasn't about looks because there were a lot of beautiful women in my industry. I think it really came down to my work ethic. I understood that what I was going to do and what I wanted to do, it encompasses more than just beauty. You have to be smart, you have to be prepared, and you have to be capable. I didn't want to just be a face. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to transcend the industry. I knew that it was stepping stone to something bigger.
So you treated it not just as, here I am, look at me, but actually these are a certain set of skills that I have to improve.
Correct. You know, from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to be in the spotlight. I competed in pageants. I just wanted to be in front of people. I wanted to hone my talents. And I loved dancing. I loved acting. I knew that I was a performer. And I'm from Las Vegas. My mother was a showgirl. My father was a police officer. And my mother passed away when I was really young. So I kind of had this conception like, oh, wow, I want to be like my mom. How am I going to apply that? And I started stripping of all things because I wanted to showcase my dancing skills. It didn't really occurred to me that I was naked. That sounds strange, but I was just like, look at me. I'm a great dancer. And it just kind of snowballed. An agent came into the club I was working at, and I was only 18 years old. And this agent was like, listen, you have star quality. There's something special about you it's hard to look away. And I was like, okay, feed me another line. But then I ended up doing a photo shoot for Playboy magazine, and I was good at it. And so I thought to myself, what can I do in order to kind of parlay this career into being super famous and not just famous for my body? And I knew that I had to hone my acting skills because if I could act well in the adult industry, that will make the mainstream industry take notice. And I was right. I have been, a little bit touched in the head, but it worked. And I'm still shocked.
So how did you go about with that preparation? Like, how did you treat it differently than other performers?
I think that I understood that if I'm putting out beautiful content, that's the key. I never wanted to.
And this is obviously before social media where everyone's thinking content, right?
Exactly, exactly. I just knew that if I flooded the industry with a lot of content, then I wouldn't be wanted as much. So I wanted to make maybe one or two films a year, and it kept people wanting more. I understood that. Really approached the adult industry as a business. It wasn't about having fun. It wasn't any of that. I knew my lines. I wrote scripts. I knew lighting. I knew camera settings. I understood behind the scenes. And I think that that transcended. So I think that
Right.
I'm an
So
overachiever.
when you said
Yeah,
work ethic, that wasn't volume of work, that was depth of
correct.
knowledge and skill.
Correct.
How did you get into working on that? Like, what did you do to become really good at your skills?
Well, okay. So when I was very young, probably I started pageants at 8 years old. So that kind of honed my skills with speaking in front of large crowds. Because on the sets of my movies, we had a very large crew. There was about 60 people in production. And I was like, I got to get out of my shyness. I've got to be able to deliver. And they always called me one take wonder. I always knew my lines. And I think that comes with a little bit of my neurodivergence. I have a really good memory when it comes to that kind of stuff. So when I walked on set, I came prepared. I looked good. I made sure that checked every single box. And then when it came to performing in sex, that was hard for me. That was the one thing that I was like, oh my, I'm so shy. How am I going to do this? I didn't have a problem being naked, but just that personal link between me and my coworker, it was difficult in the beginning. And that's why I only worked with women for the first couple of years. I felt comfortable with them. I knew that there was no threat, if that makes sense. And I also understood that if I kind of held back working with men, that I would paid more once I finally did. So I kind of used that.
Because a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of businesses, a lot of people, they'll dominate one industry and they'll, in that little bubble, they're very, very famous. And obviously you did that very quickly. But what did you do to kind of get out of that bubble? What was like, how did that, the billboard happen? Like, how did you get out of
Well,
there?
it was kind of a quick, natural progression for me. I understood that in order to be the biggest, I had to wear many hats, if you will. I knew that I had to start my own company, produce my own films, and to kind of lay the groundwork that would top other companies in my industry. So I sat at a round table with all the people that work for me at Club Jenna. And I said, listen, this is my idea. Let's buy a billboard in Times Square. They they all looked at me like I was absolutely insane. They were like, "Do you know how much that costs?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I actually do know how much that costs, and I'm telling you this is gonna change things." Because, nobody had ever done anything like that before. And I guess I'm a little touched in the head because I believed it could happen. I made it happen. I had to go
Yeah, I
to the
mean, you must have been the
city,
first
speak to the
person
the
who,
council that, like, I'm not putting anything adult up there. But I remember thinking the slogan I want is who said they cleaned up Times Square? Because at the time it was like a big thing that they were cleaning up Times Square and getting rid of all the crime and prostitution. So I put that up there and it made international news. So I decided, listen, I'm going to rent this billboard for 2 years. And every month I'm going to put a new slogan up there with my face. And yeah, it worked.
Yeah, I can imagine that because again, that your industry was kind of hidden. It was something no one wanted to talk about and you put it in everyone's face. Talk about how you started your company because I think most people get stuck as a performer. How did you take that step to elevating and becoming a producer and company
Right.
owner?
For me, I understood that being at the helm of my own company was the most imperative thing. I wanted to produce films that were different, more female driven, more, I don't know, just have more substance. And at the time I was married, my husband, he is an amazing producer, director, cameraman, really good at behind the scenes stuff, and I was just good at like marketing. And we had this vision, and we were gonna we're gonna get beautiful contract girls. We're gonna produce artsy films that had never really been filmed in the adult industry before. And our first movie that we produced, I'm pretty sure it was Brianna Loves Jenna. We did a Loves Jenna series, whoever the star was, and then my name. And it became the biggest series in many, many years in the adult industry. And it was just vignette movies, just highly stylized, really stunning, and really hot sex. So it was a good formula and it ended up really working. And it wasn't really high in cost. That was my thing. I was like, let's try to keep the cost low and sell as many units as possible. And it worked. And from there, the biggest company in our industry, which was Playboy at the time, took notice, was like, look at how many units this company is selling. Let's buy it. And they came to me and they said, and they offered me a lot of money. And I said, sold, and retired. So I had a library of about 50 to 75 films, and they bought it, and I hung my boots up. It
So
was a
I
good
want to break
plan.
down every single part of that. I want to break down every single part of that journey because that is, the entrepreneurial dream, right? Setting up your company, figuring out the marketing, and then doing a successful exit and riding off happily into the sunset. So let's start with that first moment. Would you remember when you made the decision like, okay, I'm going to start my own company instead of working for other people?
Well, there was a time in my career that I wanted to leave the industry. I didn't like the direction it was going. It felt cheap. The movies were cheap, and I didn't want to be connected to that. So I remember one day sitting down at the table with my husband and saying, I'm the biggest name in the industry. It's kind of sad to just let that go to waste. I really should produce my own films. And he looked at me and he was like, that would be the natural progression. That would make a lot of sense. And I was like, but here's the thing, I don't want to work with anybody but you. You're my husband. And he was like, okay, well, let me see if I'm able to perform. And he ended up doing what he had to do. And I did have to forego my thought process. I wanted to stay loyal to my husband at the time, and we were able to just film and then put it out, and everybody loved it, and I was only working with my husband. It was the coolest thing. I still look back at it and think, "How did."
Basically a high level home movie.
Yes, exactly. I was like, just high-end production, and all I have to do is work with my husband. It was the perfect formula, and the coolest thing was what we would do is we would shoot these scenes at our house, just great lighting, great, art direction, and just put it in the vault. We wouldn't release them. So we had these, at least like 30 scenes, and we hadn't released them. And when Playboy came knocking, I was like, listen, if you give me this much money, I will let you have my library of films. And they were like,
Right.
library of films? So that's how we ended up selling Club Jenna for $100 million. Yeah.
All right. So that's a whole journey. So but you did that at the start and just kept them at the to the side.
Exactly.
So when did you guys decide to make your first movie that you actually put out into the world?
My contract with Vivid had ended, and I met my husband on the set of a Vivid movie. He owned the place we were filming at, which was like a big warehouse. And he was just really smart and capable. And we ended up dating and getting married. And then once we were married, we were like, okay, well, how do we do this? What are we going to do from here? You're good at this and you're good at this. Let's do something so we can retire and get out. And I think there was just, I can't remember what year it was, to be honest. I just remember it was the right time. I had just gotten out of my contract with Vivid Video, and I was, if we just stockpile a bunch of scenes, I won't have to work anymore. And I'm at my peak looks wise, peak age. I think I was like 26, 27. And he was like, you know what? This is a good idea. We can do this.
How did it move from doing these home movies to doing that produced one with Loves Jenna?
Wow, I think we decided that these scenes are really good. I remember us going, "Wow, these are gonna sell really well. Why don't we go to LA, rental locations, do all the things, and produce some big movies and see where it gets us?" And once we did that, we rented this beautiful home in the hills in LA and produced Brianna Loves Jenna. And at the time, Brianna was like the biggest star, and I hadn't
So it
worked
was
in a
you and
really long.
her who were the two biggest stars, and
Exactly.
we
And it's
got
like, okay, the
basically
2 biggest
the
stars.
industry's Avengers movie.
Exactly, that's exactly right. And I remember Steve Hirsch from Vivid, because we leased it initially through Vivid. He was like, "We got so many orders. It was the highest selling film ever, ever." And once we got those numbers and looked at the spreadsheets, we were like, if we don't continue doing this, we would be crazy. So from there, we were like, okay, who's the next most famous? And at the time, it was Belladonna. And the cool thing about Belladonna was she was kind of more of the hardcore girl. I was known as kind of the untouchable girl. And Bella was, I mean, she was wild, wild. And I was like, am I going
Right.
to survive this movie? And so we did another high end production, and like really artsy, really over the top. And it was so good. We were looking at the film and we were just like, before editing, and going, wow, I think we really did it this time. And it ended up winning best film, best sex scene, best everything. So at that time, we knew that we had like hacked the matrix. We knew exactly what to do. So we continued with that exact formula. And that was when Playboy came calling.
So basically, you figured out the model, you didn't change it. Talk about the marketing and the distribution. How did you do that differently than everyone else?
Well, we tried to do everything incredibly mainstream. I think a lot of people in the adult industry kind of focused on ads in AVN, promotions at adult video stores, signings like that. Me, I was like, I'm going to do signings at Barnes and Noble. I'm going to, big, big mainstream things. And whenever we kicked off a new film, I would appear on Howard Stern. And at that time,
Right.
Howard Stern, like, he reached
And
everywhere.
how were you able to do that? How did you get on those type of mainstream shows? Like, how could you get Barnes and Noble to let you come in, Howard
Pretty
Stern
wild.
to do a show with you?
Well, I had written a best-selling book, How to Make Love Like a Porn
Right. So
Star.
this happened before Playboy
It
bought the
was it
company.
was
You
right
wrote the book.
around the same time. It's like
Okay.
everything
Well,
was
let's
hitting.
wait with the book because that's an interesting rabbit hole I want to go down in
Yes, it
itself.
is.
So talk about how you got on to like Howard Stern after making a movie.
Okay, so when it came to Howard Stern, I remember him coming calling to me. At the time, I was doing a lot of TV shows. I think I was on Jerry Springer, just, doing silly
Right.
stuff. And I was on Comedy Central a lot, and
But how did
Howard
you
was
build those relationships? That feels like that would be so far away from your industry. How did you get there?
well, I had the company I worked for, which was Wicked Pictures, had a publicist, and her name was Joy King. She was amazing, and she understood how to send out press releases. So what she would do is write out cool press releases and send them everywhere and see who bid.
Right.
And I remember she sent stuff to Comedy Central, and they were like, "Oh, we would love to have Jenna on a skit where she like
Right.
takes ice cubes out of out of a freezer and her nipples are hard afterwards." Just silly stuff, but it was like
Right.
everywhere you looked at that time, I was there. So, and nobody really knew who I was. They were just like, "Who's this cute little blonde girl?" And that's when Howard Stern,
Right. So there was a group who knew what they were watching, and there was a big group who had no idea what they were
they were just
seeing.
like, "Who's this cute little girl next door who is crazy? She's so fun." And then when Howard came calling, he was like, "I'd love to have you on and talk about how you got into the industry." I went on, and the first thing he said to me was like, "You are so all American and so cute, girl next door. How are you in the adult industry?" And once I discussed, listen, it's just a natural progression. Me, I knew what I was good at and I did it. He loved me. And so from there, it was like I was on every couple months, and then he made his big movie and put in it. I'm telling you, when I tell you my job was such a whirlwind of like every single day, I had another big, huge thing to do. And when Oprah came calling, that was like,
Yeah, I can imagine what that would do for a career and getting in mainstream. Did Joy King was she able to get other stars for your industry into the mainstream like this, or was it really only you that stood out?
well, when Joy King was promoting me, I was pretty much the only girl at that time she was promoting. Once I moved on and had already gotten very famous, she tried to apply that to other girls. And I think she was able to do it maybe a fraction of what I was able to do. She had represented Stormy Daniels, some other questionable people, but she was really good at what she did. And I think that we were just a good team. I was able to do the things that were expected of me. When I was put in front of a camera, I delivered. And there are very few girls
Kind
in
of
my
like Arnold
industry.
Schwarzenegger for the bodybuilder industry.
Yeah, I think that it was stars aligned for me. You know, People were placed in my life and my career that really held my hand through. I was capable. I was a smart girl. I was beautiful. And they just kind of molded me and I just ran with it.
And so how were you able to take that mainstream kind of again, both fame, but also where people didn't really know why you were famous? How did that translate into sales of your films? How did you make that connection?
It was so perfect because here's the thing. I ended up getting a job on the E channel as the host of a show called Wild On. And I'm just very good off the cuff. They never had to put lines up on the screen for me. I was kind of ripped. I was like, okay, put me on a red carpet and let me go. And I would just interview
Kind of like
stars.
letting Jack Black have fun on a red carpet.
Exactly. I don't know if I'm on that level of Jack Black because he's a brilliant man, but
Well, not a lot of people can compare themselves to Jack Black. So just being in the
exactly.
conversation, we'll call that a win.
Exactly. I love it. I think at the time I was such a young girl that I didn't have any fear. It was before the internet. People were not evil and mean.
Right.
Like I was having such a good time. I was going to parties. I was, making connections, and I just really loved the industry. And I think that people looked at me like, who does this girl think she is? And at the time, I thought I was a superstar. So maybe it was
Well,
delusional, but it worked.
oh, well, you acted as if and it became. So obviously it
Exactly.
worked. Just What was the distribution back then? Are we talking, adult stores, mail order? How were people getting the movies?
So at that time, everything has changed now with the internet, obviously, like streaming. Back then, we would sell to big warehouse companies. I can't remember the names of them, but they would buy a certain number of units, which were probably around 50 to 100,000 of each title. And then they sell it to the stores and distribute it. So it kind of takes the my hands out of it. So, if anything happened, if laws changed, I wouldn't be the one that went to that's kind of how it works in
Right.
America at that time. It was,
So
dicey.
your job was really just to get the word out, build the fame and the interest, and then you had other people that could then handle the distribution and put that in people's hands.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So I would produce, I would promote, and then I would get rid of the product and they would pay me. And it just got to the point where we were selling millions of units of one title. And then from that title, you can break it down, recut it, and sell that. So, or we would do like a making of this movie and sell 100,000 units of that. So yeah, I just from a very young age, I understood business.
So what was your driving force? What was it that got you motivated?
Wow. This is a really great question. Ask myself, like me, I know myself really well and I'm kind of a shy homebody. What made me decide to be the biggest porn star on the planet? It makes no sense, really. But I think that I've lived my life consistently challenging myself. And this was a big challenge because I'm shy. So I thought if I'm able to dominate this industry, I'm unstoppable. So I didn't really realize that it was going to make me a household name. I didn't realize that. And I didn't realize like what was going to come along with it because now I'm 50 years old and I am known for being the triple X Marilyn Monroe of my generation. It's kind of crazy. I had no idea I would ever get here, but here we are.
And was that the goal you wanted, fame and to be a celebrity, or what was it you really wanted?
It never really came into my mind that I wanted to be a superstar and everybody know my name. I just have always had this thought process that I wanted to be the best at whatever I did. And I knew that I was different than all the girls in the industry. I was very dedicated and smart. And I knew that I only had a shelf life of about 5 years. It ended up, 15 years, 20 years. But I knew that I had to hit while the iron was hot when I was the most beautiful of, young and fresh and happy. It just snowballed so quickly. Like one day I was shooting for Penthouse magazine. The next day I was on a billboard in Times Square. And I remember looking up at my billboard going, I did it. I actually did it. Like I shocked myself. And I think,
Yeah,
Howard
when
Stern had a
was that
huge hand
moment
in it.
when you realized so when was that moment you realized that, wow, I am a household name?
There have been a couple different instances where I kind of took inventory, where I was in the moment and was like, whoa. I think one of the very first time was when I looked up at my billboard in Times Square and my face just plastered, right next to huge stars. I was like, whoa, this is surreal. I think the next time I felt that, which was on a very, very different level, even higher, was when I was walking the red carpet at the Cannes Film Festival. And I remember thinking to myself, no one's gonna know me. I'm walking the red carpet next to Brad Pitt. They're gonna be like, who's this like little tiny blonde girl? So I remember first walking out onto the red carpet and it was silent. And I was like, no, right? And then it spread like wildfire. I heard Jenna Jameson. Jenna Jameson. And then all the lights started going off, all the camera flashes. And I remember thinking to myself, just blinded, I've made it. I've literally made it. These people across the pond know who I am. I remember being 19, go, Mom, I made it.
Yeah, that must have been huge and such a special moment. What was that creative process? You mentioned that, you'd sit with the team and you said, let's do the Times Square thing. Like, how did a creative session look in your company?
Well, it would depend on what the goal was of each meeting. We would bring in like my creatives. I would have my art director, my directors, my writers come in, and I'd be like, listen, I saw this movie last week and I would love to kind of take some of those ideas out of that movie and reconfigure it and push it as an adult title. And they were like, Jenna, how are we going to do that? That's like a $20 million budget film. And I'm like, we can do it. And we always ended up doing it. Like, if you ever watch Bella Loves Jenna, this is like a full takeoff, very little known artsy film. And it just works. People had never seen things like that in the adult world. It's usually just kind of wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. But I wanted things to be beautiful. And I think at the time when my movies were going out, it was starting to become cool for women to watch. And it wasn't just directed at men. So that's what I kind of I tried to make my films acceptable to women. And it turned out like guys were like, this is a good idea. I can show this film to my girlfriend and we could have on time. And it ended up working.
And you just doubled your audience and made it acceptable.
Correct. You're like this with
All
me.
right, well, talk about your book now. How did that come about?
So my book, I was doing so many interviews. I was, on Oprah, Bill O'Reilly, big time things. And I kind of got sick of kind of dancing around my life and young years and how I got through the industry. And so I was like, I had read Marilyn Manson's book. I think it was called Hard Road Out of Hell or something like that. And I was like, wow, this book is so well written. And so I had talked to the publisher, which was Judith Regan. She is a go-getter. Oh my gosh, an absolute dragon. And I love her. We were a lot alike. And once she came out to my house and she was like, Jenna, you have a story that needs to be told, but I need you to really tell the real story. And I was like, if I'm going to do an autobiography, this is going to be probably going to be banned in a lot of countries. And she was like, that's what I want to hear. So I sat down and Neil Strauss helped write my book with me. We sat down. He came out to my
Right,
house
the author
for
of the game.
yeah, he wrote the game. Exactly. And he's so amazing. He stayed with me for like 3 months and we just hung out and talked and talked. And he recorded me. And so once he kind of put all these points down of like what I went through, all these things, we sat down and we started storyboarding. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want this to be a regular book. I want artwork. I want photos. I want it to be like nothing I've ever seen before because I think in order to make it through a book, there has to be pictures. Like I want to know exactly who this person is that Jenna is talking about that, was her babysitter at 7. So that's how we kind of laid it out. And I was like, I want to integrate comic books because I'm a big comic fan. And so we made a comic hero out of me and intersperse that through the book. And the book, I swear, it's crazy, but it ended up working. And it's over 800 pages. A lot of women call it their Bible. And I poured my heart out and it's raw, it's scary, but it's a beautiful redemption story. And once that came out,
I mean, I've read it, and the first half is tough
it's
to get
scary,
through.
right?
I would put it down, and I'd come back to it a week later when I'd
Yeah.
kind of recovered and like, all right,
Recovered
let's
from it.
Let's keep trying. Yeah.
And, I will tell you this, piggybacking off what you're saying. I remember not being able to read it for the first couple of years after I released it, because
I can
I
imagine.
remember thinking, my God, I know I wrote about this. And if I read it again, there are millions of people that know this about you now, Jenna. And that was such a weird feeling to be so open with so many people. Now people know like the most intimate secrets about me. And in the beginning, that was scary, but now it's beautiful because I walk down the street and still to this day, women come up to me and say, thank you. Like you put down in writing what happened to me, and to have that acknowledged. It was important to a lot of people, and not only women, but a lot of men. So that was, I think, one of the biggest triumphs of my career was that book.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it is definitely a heavy read, so I totally
It
get
is. Just
how
wait till you see
emotional it
the
must have
movie.
been. Right. Once you'd written the book, how did you go around? Because it became a New York Times bestseller. I mean, that thing, it blew up. How did that happen? What did you do to make that so successful?
So once the book was finished, Judith read it and was like, this is going to change the game. This is going to be the best selling book of all time. And I was like, okay, okay. So she goes, in order for that to happen, Jenna, you have to go on tour. So I ended up on a book tour for over a year, going to every bookstore all over the world. Like this was not just the US. My sales of my
Right.
book.
That's a big insight because so like I'm in Sweden, right?
Mhm.
And I see so many American companies will be we got the US operations and we got rest of world. And the rest of us kind of go like, yeah, there's 300 million
Yeah,
people
what about
there.
us?
There's another 6.5 billion people over here. Like, come visit us.
Exactly. And I understood that I'm looked at different in Europe. There's so much more, you guys are so much more accepting and open. So I remember going over to London and all different places, and people looking at me like I was I wasn't an adult star. I was just a star. And I was like, my gosh, I want to move here. I love these people. They're smart.
Yeah, exactly. We are smart. We all
Yes.
say it.
You don't
No,
have as
but that's
many
awesome.
hangups. And it's funny to me that everybody talks about the US as being so free and liberty. You go over to Europe and it is so beautiful. Everybody is so open and accepting of things. Here it's like, I got to be careful. I got to be careful.
I mean, the Statue of Liberty was built in France, so you never know.
That's right. Listen, one of my favorite places in the world was France. I lived there for like a year, and still one of these days I'll go back. One of these days. Maybe I'll retire there.
France is
It really
awesome.
is. If
So
only I could
right
speak the
around
language.
here is when yeah. Well, I can tell you since COVID especially, they've gotten so much better at English on average
Really?
because most of Europe, because the tourists disappeared and so many countries that are tourist based realize that wait a sec, we actually like the tourists and now we want to be able to
Nice.
talk to them. So pre-COVID tourists weren't as popular. Like me as a Swede going out into Europe, if I didn't speak German or French or Portuguese or Spanish, it was like, why aren't you speaking our
Right,
language?
right.
Now that we disappeared for a few years, and it's the same
You're
thing on
like,
my
wait,
island
we
here. I live on
like
an
you.
island outside of the Swedish coast, and people used to hate the tourists because they would ruin the summer until the tourists disappear. And it's like, well, now we're broke. I think we like the tourists again. Please come back.
Huh.
So I think you'll find France a lot more forgiving when you don't know French
I've got to go
post
back
COVID.
over there. I miss it.
Definitely. Definitely. Right around here is when Playboy shows up. Before we wrap up, I want to hear that kind of story. How did that come to be? How did the negotiation go? Like, walk us through it.
Wow, that was wild. Okay, so I remember going to the AVN Awards, and they gave me some kind of crazy award, lifetime achievement award. And they told me beforehand that they were going to give me this and that I had to come, because at the time I was pretty much done making movies and I wouldn't have really shown up. But they were like, "Listen, we're going to give you a lifetime achievement award." And I was like, "Okay, I'll be there." So then I was like, "Okay, how can I really put a punch when it comes to me getting on stage for this. And I decided, pulled a full Jameson, and I remember saying something like, "Thank you for this award. I will never spread my legs in this industry again." And then I just walked off. I don't know what was going on in my brain, but it ended up making like crazy mainstream news of me saying this. But I understood that you have to be shocking in order for people to pay attention. So
Right. And shocking at an AVN Rewards means something very different than shocking in most other award ceremonies.
exactly. Me saying I'll didn't realize when I said I'll never spread my legs in this industry again, that I was in front of about 20,000 people in the adult industry. And the amount of booze, it was like, I remember them pounding the audience and everybody was like so mad and shocked. But I guess that's what I wanted. I wanted that reaction and I got it. So, and I will tell you this, I
With a bang, yeah.
held to it. I was like, I knew I was done with the industry and I wanted to kind of show women that you hold all the cards. You should never let the industry or society tell you that you have to continue doing something you're not comfortable with. So I was like, let me just put a big exclamation point after this speech. And I remembered afterwards just walking off stage and going up to my hotel room, packing my bags and leaving. It was so dramatic.
And so from that, you get the call from Playboy.
Correct. Correct. They were like, wow, Jenna. And at the time, I had worked for Playboy a lot. I appeared on countless covers. I hosted a TV show for Playboy TV, and we had a really great relationship. And they came to me and were like, oh, so, okay, you're done with the industry. Let us buy your library. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I negotiated a contract with them to promote the movies. So it's like I ended up getting paid for the content and then also paid in a contract to promote the movies. So it was very easy. I didn't have to work anymore. All I really did was take pictures for the movies and show up a couple times. Hi, these are the movies. And I was retired. That it was very, very easy.
And you used, as you said before, the vault videos to negotiate and raise your price. How did that negotiation go?
Well, I think that I had been in such demand. I had only released maybe one or two movies in a 2-year span, and they did so well. And I was like, "Listen," Playboy came and they were like, "Oh, we want to buy your content." And I was like, "Well, my last movie sold over 3.5 million units. I expect you to double that and then pay me on the back end. I want a certain percentage of each movie sold." And I remember speaking to Hef and him saying, you are a tiger in business. He's like, I respect it and I'm going to pay it just because you such a tiger and you deserve it. So the negotiations with Playboy were actually really easy because Hef respected women. He understood that we are the cornerstone, that whole entire industry, whether it's hardcore or softcore. And so I easily got what I wanted with Hef.
He realized that he'd make money either way, and you realized you could get paid both up front and on the back end because you were you.
Exactly. And he knew that I was retired. There was never going to be any other movies. So these movies I had a vault were gold. Like they were going to sell like hotcakes. So there was no competition for these movies and they just like slowly released them. I promoted them and he made a lot of money off me. We both made a lot of money off me.
Well, hey, win-win. That's what we like to see in business, right?
Exactly. That's what business is all about, right?
I like it. All right. So every interview, we end with a rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You just answer the first thing that comes to mind. You
Okay,
ready?
I'm excited for this.
All right. Yeah. We'll see if you're as good off the cuff as you claim to be. So here's the
God, no
test.
pressure.
Exactly. Just the world is watching now. I mean, this is worse than that
Okay.
AVN. The
Okay.
world is
Okay.
watching now.
Okay.
You know, this is the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast. It's not like Oprah or something. This is the real thing.
I
Uh,
mean,
all right. One. What was one belief you had to let go of?
that it's man's world. I truly believed that everything revolved around men. And once I saw my power, that shattered that thought process for me.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a cool one. All right. What was one boundary that you set for yourself that changed everything?
My number one boundary was I was able to choose who and when I worked with. There were women in my industry did not have to even process who they worked with. They just showed up and did what they were told. Me, I laid the groundwork for future women being able to say exactly what they wanted and never deviating from that. So
Awesome. Awesome. All right. What is one hard lesson that you found that fame teaches?
there are so many lessons I've learned when it comes to fame, but I think the number one lesson is to keep boundaries when it comes to the truth of your life. The things that are important to you, you have to protect them at all costs. And I learned the lesson that if you're too open, you can end up getting hurt. So I've learned boundaries.
Right. And then you put everything into a book and gave it to the world anyway.
But
All right.
that's why I'm
What is
hidden out in the forest.
Yeah.
I don't walk the
It's a good
streets
idea.
anymore.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to come to Europe. We're nicer here. You'll be all right.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'd love
What
that.
is one daily habit that keeps you steady?
Wow. I am a habitual woman. The very first thing I do in the morning before I even brush my teeth, I make my bed. And that comes from my father, who is military. He said that that's the best way to start off the day correctly. You feel like you've accomplished something right off the bat. So you will never see my bed unmade.
Yeah, I was going to say that is a very military tradition right there.
Yes, my
Um,
dad.
all
My
right.
dad.
Last one. How do you define freedom now?
Wow, that's a really great question. Freedom for me is about truly being myself, not having to wear any kind of mask, not trying to be sexy and be accepted. True freedom for me is showing people who I am and knowing that there are good people out there that will accept me. That's freedom.
It's freedom. Well, I so appreciate you joining us. Do you want to leave us with any words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you so much. Such a lovely conversation, refreshing. When it comes to words of wisdom from Jenna Jameson, that just sounds funny. It's really
That is now going to be a meme, by the
it
way.
just sounds funny.
That's going to go
Words of
viral.
wisdom
Words
from
of
the
wisdom from Jenna
Jameson.
Jameson. That is now going to take over the internet.
Listen, I think that I am the perfect example of following your heart. You have to really trust your intuition. And when something feels right, do it. Don't think that as humans, we second guess everything and we end up missing our opportunities. So keep your dignity and go for it, whatever that might be.
I That definitely wisdom words from Jenna Jameson. I love it. I so appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank
This
you.
was absolutely amazing.
It was super fun. I love you guys. I love you, Sweden. Please bring me over there. I'm gonna go.
You are welcome to our continent whenever you want.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us for the interview here with Jenna Jameson. It's time for my probably favorite segment of the show, where me and the Swedish Wealth Institute team have broken down the interview and can give you some clear takeaways that you can implement right away. So here at the Swedish Wealth Institute, we are obsessed with one question. What is the difference that makes the difference? And so that's what we're going to try to answer here in these 5 key takeaways that we've taken from the episode. So our first takeaway is to treat your talent like a business, not just your personality. So Jenna didn't rely on her looks. She didn't rely on luck. She treated her career like a professional operation. Preparation, reliability, execution, and results. In a crowded market, pretty good makes you invisible. Professional makes you stand out. Number 2, Scarcity beats volume. So instead of flooding the market, she intentionally limited her output, creating a pent-up demand and keeping people always wanting more. So the lesson is simple. Don't just try to produce more, produce smarter. So scarcity is a key strategy. 3, depth wins. So you learn the whole game, not just your role. So Jenna didn't just show up and was on camera. She learned what most people chose to ignore: the scripts, the production, lighting, positioning, camera, marketing, all the behind the scenes decisions. That was the difference from being a worker in the industry and becoming an owner of leverage within the industry. 4, go mainstream with your message, even if your industry is niche. She engineered attention, big moves, big visibility, big platforms. She didn't wait to be discovered, she manufactured her reach. Attention doesn't just happen, it's built purposefully. 5, assets can be sold, not just income that can be spent. So the real power move for her wasn't just fame, it was building a real company with real IP and a library of products, something a bigger player would want to buy and monetize. That's what made the exit possible. If you want freedom, build something that has value beyond you. Before I let you go, I want to spoil you with a final gift from us. I hope you take all of this and implement into your life and truly make sure that this has an impact. So as a thank you for joining us today and spending all this time with us, we want to give you a free ticket to our next Swedish Wealth Institute event, where you'll get access to some of our world-class speakers, including Robert Kiyosaki, Les Brown, Nick Vujicic, Janet Atwood, Brian Tracy, Jack Canfield, Marcy Shimoff, and more. So to claim your free ticket, check the show notes. It's first come, first serve. And if you haven't heard of all these speakers before, well, go check out the podcast episodes we've done with them, and you will be excited that all of them will be speaking at the same event. So before you go, let me remind you, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you follow and subscribe, just like people have done all over the world, so you don't miss what's coming next. And of course, if you know someone who's trying to stand out or grow a brand or build a real business in a noisy market, please share this episode with that friend so they have a chance to learn as well. If you'd like to give us a 5-star review after listening, we'd really, really appreciate it. That's how this podcast reaches the next wave of high performers who need it. Next week, we have a truly amazing episode for you. We are featuring Sandy Cohen, a mindset coach who has helped Olympic athletes, NHL superstars, and others maximize their potential and their results. You won't want to miss this one. So I'm Daniel Wood. This is the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast. And again, thank you for joining us.
I think talent is somewhat overrated. When you get to the high levels, everybody has skill. The differentiator is really this concept of focus. I think for a lot of people, they confuse the concept of awareness and focus. The difference is like looking out of a window, that would be a focus would be like looking into a mirror, super dialed in. Don't worry about blocking out, just